Good morning, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar, which is all about unlocking the power of LinkedIn automation for recruiters. My name's Adam Osman. I'm the head of marketing at Dux-Soup, and I'm very pleased to have with me today two expert speakers from within the industry, Scott Wright, the head of sales at Dux-Soup, and James Osborne, Chief Growth Officer, I think co-founder of TRN. Before I hand over to these two chaps, just a couple of quick housekeeping points. If you've joined this on a mobile or a tablet, best thing to do is switch your phone to landscape mode. It just makes it easier to access some of the interactive content. On24 is a new platform for us. There are a lot of interactive elements. You can resize the windows. You can choose to focus either just on the slides, although this isn't a slideware presentation today. It's a fireside chat between James and Scott. You can focus on the speakers. There's access to resources. If you want to scroll down and play around with the platform, you find speaker bios, lots of different things like this. There is a question box, so if you have questions that you want to put to James and Scott, please pop them in the question box. We've got time at the end of the chat to run through any questions. The session is being recorded, and quite nicely, it's just the same link that you dialed in today to retrieve the on-demand replay. And that's going to be available tomorrow by the time the platform's done its preparation thing. So without further ado, let me hand over to Scott and James.
Right on. Thank you so much, Adam. Really appreciate that introduction. James, how's it going? Long time no see.
Well, very good. Yeah, long time no see, exactly. But I'm probably a lot better than you because it's like normal time for me. This is about 10 o'clock in the day. It's probably about 2 o'clock in the morning for you. So
yeah. A little bit. It is 2:02 a.m. Currently right now in San Francisco. So I'm coming to you live. I don't know if I should have coffee or a beer, to be quite frank with you. And I think because we talked, I think we talked, it was a couple weeks ago, right? Or 2 weeks ago, something like that. And we did, I think it was 4 a.m. last time, my time. So my circadian rhythm's all messed up or whatnot. But no, it's great. And I loved our conversation so much that we had before. When you had me on for the LinkedIn Live, that we wanted to be able to do the same type of thing, but here hosted on this side of the house as well. But also talk a little bit about just continuing our conversation, but also hearing a little bit about more on TRN and as it pertains to maybe some LinkedIn automation. And so one of the first questions I just wanted to kick this off with is like, when I was taking a look at TRN and I noticed that you guys have just about 80,000 followers, right? And it made me think about like what it takes to be able to get and establish something like that and get up to those sort of levels. And obviously LinkedIn's a big portion of this, but I was curious like how that story sort of came about and, you know, was automation a part of it? Was it not? Were there pros and cons? Like what was kind of a little bit of the story of how that sort of interacts there?
Yeah, it's a great question. And we're huge fans of LinkedIn. I'll make it really, really clear. I think LinkedIn as a force to do promotion of who you are and what you do and build a network, I think is fantastic. I think sometimes there's possibly a little bit too much reliance on LinkedIn to an extent, but I think it's a really important part of the technology stack of any recruiter if you're using it properly. So we never really had a big LinkedIn strategy when it came to certainly not using automations from the outset. We just wanted to make sure that we used the voice of TRN, I suppose, without trying to sound conceited, but we wanted to sort of have a voice in the marketplace and make sure that we were speaking to the industry continuously, sharing ideas, sharing best practice, and adding value. That was really important to us. We never wanted to use LinkedIn as a place to have debates have arguments. We never wanted to be political and all those types of things. We never wanted to be a place where we were posting pictures of our dogs and cats and families and babies and all that type of stuff. We wanted to use it as a real professional sort of platform where people can have conversations, debates, share ideas, et cetera, et cetera. So for us, it was a big part of our strategy. And I think what we did was we went down the route of let's just do shed loads of really cool content, add value, give a load of stuff away. And by doing so, I think on the back of that, we've just created a really nice following of people who I think generally get a bit of a value out of what we post every day, sort of stuff. So that was really the strategy. And I think just by default, because I think the quality and the quantity of what we were putting out was good enough, that it just created a nice following. And that's to say we're up to over 80,000 now. To get to that point, though, we never really used much automation, actually, interestingly enough. So it wasn't an automated play to get to that point. If we were to start again today, and we were starting from ground zero trying to get up to 80,000 today, I would be all over automation because it would be a hell of a lot quicker to get there.
Interesting. I mean, that's kudos to you. I mean, it takes a lot of hard work to be able to establish something and get that sort of recognition. But it goes to show that, like, if you're posting the right content and maybe sharing the right content as well to the right people, that you can do just as much damage as if it was damage in a good way. Sorry, I didn't mean to say it in negative context. But in terms of getting the same amount of effects. But seeing that you weren't using necessarily LinkedIn automation to be able to get you to this area, but it makes me, I mean, obviously we want to talk about automation, segueing into this a little bit. Have you guys now incorporated LinkedIn automation? If you have not, what has been your experience? What have been some pros, some cons, some negative things? Has anything happened? Have you had any horror stories? What's been your LinkedIn automation story if you haven't?
Yeah. I think I'll answer the question not about TRN. I'll answer the question based on all the recruitment companies that we advise, because I think that's more applicable to your audience about actually, who's using automations as recruiters, because we're not recruiters, right? We're advisors to the industry. So our play is slightly different. Our audience is slightly different. Recruiters have two audiences. They've got candidates and clients. They have to have a slightly different strategy or a double strategy as well. So if I talk to it from a point of view of the industry and the companies that I work with closely and the members of TRN, I think there's two there's probably three very clear camps around automation. There's camp number one, which is don't believe in automation. I think it's dangerous. I don't like it. I'm not going to touch it. Stay away from it. In fact, I'm an anti-automated type person. You've got the camp who are basically saying, let's try and embrace it. This is a great way to replace my recruiters. It's a great way just to sort of literally just almost like vomit all over the industry or over your client base, because I can do it on mass scale. And then there's the third group who are basically going, automation is genius if used properly. And I think that is the caveat with this, because we saw this when LinkedIn first came out. We saw this when all sorts of these job boards came out, etc. People use things in very, very different ways. If you use it right, it's brilliant. If you use it wrong, it will kill your business or have a significantly detrimental effect, and also be a complete waste of time. So where I've seen it work are where recruitment organizations build a proper automation strategy to say, actually, we're going to use automation to support what we're doing, not to replace what we're doing. We're going to use it to improve personalization, not to dumb down personalization or sort of the human sort of touch. We're going to look at the data that sits behind automation and understand what that tells us about our strategy so we can improve our strategy, and so on and so forth. So for me, when it's done right, it's brilliant. I've seen a lot of people try automation and they've done it wrong. And consequently, they're now anti-automated because they go, oh, no, it's terrible. It's dumbing down our industry and blah, 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 blah. It's not. It's only dumbing down the industry if you're doing it wrong, I would say.
Yeah, and I mean, beautifully said, right? In terms of, people being able to use automation, but if they don't use it correctly, or they're just saying, checking a box, yeah, we use LinkedIn automation, but you're not putting enough thought into it, and it can absolutely kill your business or make you look like spam or get you blocked or the list goes on and on and on. And obviously we do experience that here at Dux-Soup with people purchasing our product and garbage in, garbage out type of a situation, which we try to do a lot of conversations with and do a lot of coaching especially whenever I'm speaking with somebody, because all too often we get maybe like recruiters that are coming in and maybe writing this sort of weird random message that you wouldn't even respond to yourself. And then they go ahead and ship it out to like a couple hundred people. And then it's like, would you have responded that to you in your own self? So yeah, it definitely makes sense on that area. That said, though, like when it comes to like recruiters and their tech stack, like how do you see the tech stack, or like at least the folks that are working, are the users and community base of TRN? What is the tech stack normal or like looking like? Is LinkedIn automation a part of that, or is it not? Is it kind of? What are most recruiters using on these sort of cases?
Yeah, I think it's becoming more and more prevalent. I think more and more people are getting their heads around LinkedIn automation. They're less fearful of it, I would suggest. If I can just go back to the strategy piece, because I think this is a big important part. Because if you go traditionally, if you look at a recruitment company's tech stack, let's go back 3-4 years ago, it was just like loads of stuff. We had all this stuff, and you can put it on a nice pictorial screen of all these different systems and techs, etc. They're all somehow, hopefully, linking, maybe not type stuff, but it's just lots and lots of things that we're using. I think a lot of people realize over the last couple of years, as they were looking at their cost base and making sure they're getting good return on investment for everything, that a lot of their technology wasn't really providing a return on investment, or at best it was maybe they were using 20% of it and not really getting the full functionality. So there's been a lot of what I call right sizing. Not necessarily reducing cost, not necessarily eliminating technology, but actually basically saying, well, actually, what tech do we really need? What's going to really drive the agenda forward right now, and what's best in class? And I think LinkedIn automation full stop, but LinkedIn automation is a big growth area within that, but it has to fit in with the strategy. So what's the strategy? I'll give you an example, a real life example. There was a recruitment company I was talking to last week, and they've implemented some automation, a whole load of automation stuff. And they're very proud about what they've done, about all the different automations. And they've got all these little dashboards set up with tech doing all this type of stuff. And it was all looked very pretty. But actually, the reality, they weren't getting any results off the back of it. And I said, well, what are you doing? What's the conversion rate? What are you getting off the back of this? And they were basically just doing lots and lots of automation and hoping it would work and waiting for the phone to ring. I'm going, you're kidding me. You're completely getting this wrong. Automation is part of an omnichannel or a multi-channel strategy that you have to go and win business or win clients. So you don't do a load of automations and then just wait and go, I've done my automations. It's going to, as long as I keep this sequence keep going, I'm going to get some of the phone being picked up and etc. You've got to go and still do all the other touches. So to me, LinkedIn automation is part 1, 3, and 7 of a 10 touch point omnichannel strategy to bring in people into your business and to bring in customers, etc. So that's a really important part of the tech stack. So the tech stack is linked together. It's not just one separate thing. And that tech stack does include the telephone. It's part of the tech stack. So if people are coming in today going, I'm going to get rid of the telephone now and just use LinkedIn automation because none of my recruiters want to pick up the phone anymore. They rather just send out emails all day long, etc. and emails. Then I think you've missed the whole point of what this is about. But if you can say, actually, where does LinkedIn automation sit in that workflow? And then what are the bits I need to do around that? Pick up the telephone, send out a WhatsApp at the same time, et cetera, et cetera. Then this stuff really, really works. It becomes fantastic. And then obviously the great thing about things like Dux-Soup and what you guys are doing is that you can then really start measuring and assessing the data that sits behind all this. So what does work? What does good personalization look like? What does good timing look like? When is at what point are customers going to read an email, open an email, and et cetera, et cetera, then automate around that for obvious reasons. So to me, it's part of the process in this tech stack.
No, that's, going back to what you were mentioning about omnichannel, 100%. And I think we actually talked about this on our previous conversation too. A firm believer in when people, I've met both sides of the coin where they're like, I don't believe in social media or LinkedIn or really anything. It's all about the phone, right? And then I've met the other people who are like, it's all LinkedIn. What are you even doing touching a phone? Like, who even calls somebody at this day and age, right? But I think we're both on the same page in terms of omnichannel. In fact, I've only been working for Dux-Soup for about a year, but I've been using it for, since 2018, and I've managed a couple of different sales development representative teams and then built my own company on top of it and sold it. And now I work for the company, which is great. And I've consulted hundreds of recruiters in different firms, and we have a bunch working for us and whatnot. Anyways, why do I say that? Well, back in the day, one of the ways I would utilize this in a very simplistic way from a more exact framework was you have your emailing and calling sequences, right? So you maybe make a call, email, call, whatever your sequence is that you've seen work for you before, right? Continue that on. And then when you get to the end of that sequence, right, or at least the prospects get to the end of that sequence, they're going to fall into one of a few different buckets, right? They're going to fall into qualified or unqualified because they responded, answered the phone call, responded back to your email, whatever it was. Or they're going to be opened and then everybody else. And opened and everybody else, push those then through Dux-Soup. Nowadays, though, you can now integrate Dux-Soup into all of your omni-channel steps right into this, and even have integrations into your CRMs, like HubSpot or Salesforce or Pipedrive and have two-way integrations with all that type of stuff, which makes it really fascinating. But while this should be definitely a portion of this, LinkedIn is always, I feel like the shoe could be right above us at a lot of these sort of cases and like always under a threat. What are your thoughts around limitations and like restrictions and like going about this? What are your thoughts around that overall? Do you have any thoughts?
Well, no, I mean, I think it's one of the biggest fears, isn't it, about using LinkedIn automation is people are concerned about, are they going to get caught by the spam filters of LinkedIn, all that type of stuff, are the spam detection things going to kick in, et cetera, et cetera. Are we overutilizing it? So I think that there's a fear factor around that. And I think that's probably based around poor quality automations that have been on the market in the past that just don't really work. Mm-hmm. And then, we download something, we look at, well, that sounds pretty clever, pretty sexy. So I'm going to use that. Next thing you know, your LinkedIn account's been blocked and et cetera, because it was a rubbish tool. So I think that's created a bit of fear factor in the industry. I think generally, I think we spoke to that last time we got together and we spoke about how you guys get around that and are a safe place to be hanging out from a LinkedIn automation point of view, which is important. So I think there is a fear factor around from that point of view. I think the other fear factor around, and it is interesting, isn't it? And again, we spoke to this before, but you do have these different people who say, recruitment, selling, it's recruitment full stop, it's all about telephone, bang the phones, pick up the phone, smash the phones. As long as you do enough of it, you probably get through and win enough business. And then there's people on the other side who say basically the phone's dead, just do marketing, do social, post pictures of your dog and all that sort of stuff, and it will work. And I think they're two extremes in today's day and age. I think you need to sit in the middle between the two. I think the top of the funnel, creating MQLs, those marketing qualified leads, is all about your social brand and et cetera, and building up rapport with your marketplace, like we've done to an extent, to get to 80,000 followers, et cetera, and using automation to expedite that and keep that warm and keep that fresh. And then the SQL pit, the bit at the bottom of the sales funnel, is really going to, at some point, require someone to pick up the telephone and have a proper, decent conversation with them. So I think that piece there is important. So I think again, I'm not sure if I'm answering your question directly, but I just think it's fascinating that we've got to be really careful that we don't look at these things in silos and go, this is how sales is done, or this is how sales, and we need to think, actually, this is a blended solution here. Which I think has put people off in the past a little bit because they don't quite get their head around it. I'm an old school salesperson, I'm just going to pick up the phone, or I'm a new form sales guy and it's all about social strategy. It's bringing those two together. I think that creates the excellence in recruitment sales.
Yeah, absolutely. And I've met so many folks that just have thought like, oh, LinkedIn's just like a Rolodex, basically. Like I just use it to look people up. And it's like, don't you realize that there's a little button there that says you can connect with them and just message them? What's the difference? Mm-hmm. But then it's also been sort of a generational divide with people that I've seen. I won't put names to different generations here, but I've seen a lot of folks be like, what am I going to say to this person, or how do I even approach this type of folks, right? Like, what do I say to them? Oh, they accepted my connection request. Does that mean they read everything about my profile? That means they want to they want to take a look at this and that. And it's like, whoa, no. That doesn't mean any of that. It's actually, it is a little bit of a different ballgame. And, I think we talked also a little bit about mediums, right? In terms of like, you got phone calling, you got emailing, right? Those are different types of mediums, and same with like LinkedIn, and being a little bit of like I like to think of it as like professional texting in a weird way, like as if you're texting like you're like a coworker or something like that, but you're doing it through like a chat on LinkedIn in these different areas. But one of the common things and threads that I see amongst so many of our 80,000 users that we have using LinkedIn automation is what to say at the same time, right? And knowing like, what do I put in my LinkedIn automation? How do I not sound like a bot, or how do I not sound like spam? How do I make sure that I prevent myself against this? Have you seen similar things? Do you have any thoughts on that? Do you have any key points associated with like right things to say in these areas?
Yeah, we really, really overthink this. I mean, we really, really do. And it's quite funny. It's like doing podcasts, right? Look at how podcasts has evolved. It's like you can't do a podcast today unless you've got some very sexy backgrounds and some lounge setting that you've got set up and some really cool microphones. And it's like, that's rubbish. People don't come to look at your lounge setting. They come to listen to some really good
content. Look at us. There you go.
Exactly. And exactly, yeah. Look how raw this is, right? But I mean, I look at content as people just want to get content. It's the visual representation of how it looks is just a way of keeping people engaged, I suppose, and making it slightly friendly on the eye. But they've come to your webinar, they've looked your in-mail or your outreach because they want to get something from you. And we really, really overthink this. One of the best strategies we've ever done is we sit down regularly. To be fair, I haven't done this for a while, actually, because I suppose we've got into a bit of a groove now about how we produce our content. But for people who are a little bit sort of looking for thought starters, I suppose, and how to start writing content and writing outreach, etc., just stop trying to write stuff for LinkedIn and just sit down with someone opposite the table and just have a chat with them and just record the chat. Get something like Claude out. If you're not familiar with Claude, like Claude AI, and get something like Claude out to record yourself just chatting with a colleague about the market, about the industry, about whatever, and just spitball some ideas about talking about what's going on in the market. Don't try and think about sales, but within that will be the most incredible content that you could utilize. So, just have a chat for 5 minutes about every candidate you spoke to in the last 7 days. What did you learn? What were they saying about the markets, etc.? Just chat about it. Record that. Take the transcription of that. There's your content for the next 6 months. So I think sometimes we try and become very salesy and very marketing-y when actually what people are really looking for is, I just want to talk to someone in my language, in human terms, in just real terms. I want to talk to a real person. And I think that sometimes we overthink this. So I look at some content that goes out even on our post sometimes, by our marketing team, and go, it's very marketing, it's very bit salesy. It's just, that's not how I speak. And I don't think it's how people would like to be spoken to. So let's just bring it back to a conversational tone and do it that way. And I think you get so much better traction. I've seen that with my own eyes when it comes to the conversion ratios, et cetera, of posts and outreaches, when it's far more conversational and relaxed, not casual, not in a rude way, but it's more conversational and relaxed, less pressurized, less salesy than it is otherwise. The amount of times we're trying to produce these sensationalized headlines on our posts and our LinkedIn outreaches, and it's just too much. It's far too much.
Sure.
And I think the more automation is part of our day-to-day lives, which it is, and through AI and everything else, the more human we need to be in our outreach, in our telephone calls, in our content, in our in-reads, in our emails, everything, as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, no, I beautifully said, actually. That's and you do, the overthinking part is I'm gonna steal that portion from you and actually utilize that. You see so many people basically taking what they said on an email and plugging it into like a LinkedIn message and like praying to God it works, and then at the end of the day it's like, no, just take a step back and try to be natural. And so with Dux-Soup, right, what you're able to do with at least us and our LinkedIn automation is you're able to create sort of sequences automated wise and pre-write out connection requests and connected with in-mails and maybe follow-ups, and Dux-Soup will detect when they've accepted and take decision trees, and you'll be able to see the KPIs and analytics associated with that. So you'll be able to see if they responded to you, and you'll be able to see how many people responded to that campaign. And so it's basically just saving you so much time on these areas. But one of the areas that we just, again, see is that people do absolutely just overthink it, and they put in a lot of extra information. Hey, my name's Scott Wright. I work for this company. And this is what we're doing. This is what we're all about. And here's my URL. And here's my calendar link. If you're interested, you can go ahead and book some time here and yada, yada. And it's like, whoa, just back up for a second here, right? Like, it's just like, go from a little bit more of a human approach and use Dux-Soup to maybe get the accepted connection and grow your network. So you're going to get more views to your post as well. And then on top of that, get a response and then try and work that response into a better conversation. Now, don't like ask in your LinkedIn automation with Dux-Soup, don't say something like, hey, how's the weather in wherever your location is or whatnot, right? Be more specific and be more professional, I guess, to what you were saying there earlier, but be more casual. And I think that's like it's a little bit of an art, but with a little bit of AI and a little bit of assistance and being able to have some sort of way to A/B test like you can with Dux-Soup. You can basically create multiple different campaigns, run this one, run that one, do 25 in this one, do 25 in that one, and so on and so forth, and then be able to see which one works the best for you and double down, right?
Well, this is it. And if you look at the principle of Dux-Soup, the way it's built, it's about running a over time series of sequences to a target audience. That's what it's ultimately about.
Correct.
And if you look at what the right sales approach is, it's about nurturing people over a period of time so they feel comfortable to want to engage with you properly, buy from you, etc., etc. We have this mentality in recruitment that sales can be done there and then. So here's a cold customer, get on the phone, close them right there and then, sort of stuff. And I know that can work from time to time, don't get me wrong, if you're in the right time, in the right way and saying the right things and you've got the right candidate. But the majority of time, it just doesn't work. So for me, whatever strategy you're taking, just remember, if someone's going to buy from you and buy from you properly, in other words, buy a proper retained partnership with you, whatever it might be, that is a nurturing process over a period of time. Don't rush it, just do it properly. And as long as you're doing lots and lots and lots of it on a continuous cycle, then you're not like slowing yourself down. You're just basically allowing yourself to win much better business over periods of time. And I think that nurturing thing is, to me, what Dux-Soup is really about. It's about nurturing people down through a sales funnel process. So I'm allowed to have the right to call them up and have a proper, meaningful conversation with them.
Absolutely, yeah. The nurturing portion is a big aspect that sometimes even gets overlooked by some of our audience because they don't realize that they could create sequences that could be 90 days long, right? 30 days, send this message, 30 days later, send this message, follow up to this person. In fact, actually, I was giving I had a call with somebody I signed up not too long ago, and they do like a consulting service for like entrepreneurs or something like this. And as I was talking to her, she goes, yeah, somebody messaged me and they said, oh, they're not going to be ready for this in like 5 years. And I said, oh, like 5 years? No, she said, no, 5 years. Like it's going to be 5 years. And I was like, oh, wow, so you want like a nursery sequence for 5 years? And she's like, yeah, can we do that? I was like, yeah, for sure. If we want to set that up. But to that point, right, it's Dux-Soup can be able to handle all of these types of things. I mean, when it comes to these LinkedIn automations, also at the same time, there's a lot of different automation tools out there that do exist, right? Mm-hmm. The market is pretty, I would say, flush with us. But with Dux-Soup, one of the things that we've done very well is we do support recruiters, Sales Navigator, or even regular LinkedIn, free LinkedIn, premium, doesn't matter. You don't need any of those, or you could have all of them, right? You can run Dux-Soup on any of those sort of areas. But that said, one of the reasons that a lot of these companies sort of disappear, though, and why we're still here and we've been around for 10 years, it's kind of crazy to think about, like 10 years in LinkedIn automation. 10 years ago, I mean, that was 2015, right? Yeah. What we were doing back then. And in that, during those days, I started using Dux-Soup in 2018. LinkedIn then, you could send a couple hundred a couple hundred connection requests a day and fly underneath LinkedIn's radar. Nowadays, you can only send about 25 a day or so, maybe 100 a week up to these sort of areas. So yeah, it's been really interesting in terms of where this sort of area is going and how recruiters are looking at this and being able to adopt these types of different tools and in all these other areas. Well, it's awesome, though. Nice. Well, there's a little bit of our time. I think we're coming to time here. Adam, do we have any questions that have maybe popped up during our Q&A in any of these?
Sure. We have I think, one quick question. Maybe we can get a quick soundbite from each of you. What would you say to someone who is on the fence about whether or not to use LinkedIn automation?
Well, I would say you definitely should be using it, but make sure you're blending it into your strategy. As I said, I think there was a Gartner report that came out that was saying that 75% of all B2B interactions by the end of this year will be automated in some format. So for me, 75%, if you can do that using a brilliant system that's delivering it automated, such as Dux-Soup, etc., then that leaves you that 25% of the time to be the personal bit, which is the telephone and the face-to-face and that sort of thing. So to me, it's not a question of should you be doing it. I think you absolutely should be doing it, but you should be doing it correctly and with the right partner. And that's just key to this. Otherwise, it's going to blow up in your face. It's as simple as that. It won't work.
I agree with what James is saying as well. And then just adding on the one last piece of this, where yes, doing it correct. And it's like when you're doing something for the first time, it's hard to know if you're doing it correct or not. So one of the things I always suggest is start slow, be patient, and play the long game, right? Like this is going to be a part of your strategy as you start to move forward. And so be patient. Don't think necessarily you would need to crank it up to 1,000 out of the gates because you don't necessarily know what type of messaging is going to work to the audience you're trying to target in these areas. So use something like Dux-Soup, wink, wink, to where you can then manage and see the actual KPIs of how like a campaign is actually working for you and enroll a brief amount.
Great. Yeah.
Any others, Adam?
I think that's it for the time that we have. We have one more question from Mark, but we'll follow up directly with you on that, Mark. Scott, do you want to wrap up?
Sure. So yeah, thank you so much, James, for jumping on and sharing your thoughts here. I look forward to the opportunity to put you at 2 a.m. or maybe 4 a.m. on another podcast later on down the road, where we could share some of these thoughts and get a little bit more into some of the other areas, maybe even get into some creative strategies more specifically. Would be a fun thing to sort of pick apart in these areas. But that said, I do appreciate you jumping on, and that also to our audience, thank you for joining us on this. That said, for anybody that is on here right now, if you go ahead and reach out to me on LinkedIn, or we'll also have our emails associated with this and whatnot. If you reach out to me and we set up some time to have a conversation, we give all the TRN and everybody that's on this call a 15% discount off of any Dux-Soup plan for LinkedIn automation. This also comes with a complimentary consulting session with myself to help you make sure that it's set up properly and all catered accordingly. As Dux-Soup's really been my life and blood for almost 10 years now as well. So happy to supply that as well. So feel free to reach out and we'll offer this as a discount. And that said, James, thank you so much for joining us. Adam, appreciate you setting all this up. And thank you to everybody joining, and have a great rest of the day, evening, night, or wherever you're at.
Good on you. Thanks, guys. Appreciate it.
Thanks, everybody.